And so for me, I knew a couple of things. I did not want a community that was just like a ghost town that like people treated like a self promotion, drop and leave, and there was no depth of connection. It was just like a passing ships in the night. And I was like, I don't want that. Um, I wanted a community that was going to last for years. That was something I told myself at the very beginning. Like, this is not something that's going to fall over in the next 2 months. Like, this is going to be a sustained, long term, like decades, hopefully, decades long community.
Welcome to the Community Unlocked podcast hosted by Helena and Olena, where we have in depth conversations with top tier community leaders and growth experts. Our goal is to provide you with concrete and actionable advice to help you learn about building, launching, and growing your community. Today, our guest is Milly Tamati. Milly is the founder of Generalist World, the community, education, and opportunity hub for folks with nonlinear, squiggly careers. She has spent the past decade building businesses around the globe and is now living on a little island in the Scottish Highlands. Milly's passionate about creating intentional products, equalizing disparity in tech, and amplifying rural entrepreneurship. Milly, hi, thanks so much for being here today. How are you?
I'm doing really, really good. Thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to see you again.
Really lovely to see you too. We are so excited to have you here. So excited to ask you about what you're doing, what you've done, and learn from you. And of course, others will learn from you too, all the listeners. So I guess the first question is, when did you realize that you were a generalist?
Oof, starting with a tricky one. I guess the short answer is I think deep down I always knew because I had this very unusual career that was jumping across different domains and roles and industries. And I found that that was where I was happiest and most fulfilled and most productive. But I guess like when I really came across the word generalist, it was about a year and a half ago, 18 months ago. And I was updating my LinkedIn profile with my role at the time, which was the director of miscellaneous. And I was just like, why don't I know anyone else with a title like that? It's such an odd title. And I knew that I didn't quite fit into any like very specific communities. I just thought, there must be other people like me. And when I started looking for them, I couldn't find any communities who were like, this is for generalists. And so I just took the initiative and ran with it and created one.
I've heard your story before, and obviously I'm a big fan, and I think this is your path has been quite an incredible one. So, you decide to, okay, you're just going to run with it. Did you have any plan at the beginning, or how did you envision this?
Yeah, the honest answer is this entire thing was a very, very happy accident. It wasn't like I sat down one day with a big whiteboard and I was like, I'm going to create a movement. I think it's funny when it's easy to look back in retrospect and in hindsight and be like, oh, that seemed obvious, like that was going to be an obvious path. But when you're just beginning and you're just starting something, you don't know how it's going to go. It really is about starting with these one-to-one conversations and seeing if you can find one and then five and then 10 people who kind of fit and fall into this like shape that you're looking for. And it was very early on, though, I will say, I've been building businesses for 8 years. And like I know how incredibly hard it is to get traction and to get momentum and to get someone's eyes to light up. Like it's a really, really difficult thing to do. But when I think back to those early days of the first 1 and 5 and 10 people, every single one of them, their eyes were lighting up. And it was like this secret that they were like, oh, me too. Like, this is what I've been thinking and haven't been able to put into words. And you've just named it. You've just named it. It's this word generalist, which the whole, like, there's a total negative connotation with that comes with that, which is a whole nother kind of side of the coin. But that was the beginning. It was very simple. It was like, just these conversations, understanding what are the patterns? What are the similar pain points and challenges and opportunities as well, the positive parts that have come from other people experiencing this and identifying with this? And yeah, it was very early on. I think 3 weeks in, I quit my director of miscellaneous job and went all in on Generalist World.
Milly, I'm curious because Helena knows your story, but I do not know in details. I think some of the listeners will not know details of
Yeah.
your personal story.
So I grew up in New Zealand, as you may be able to hear from the accent. And I grew up in a very small farming town, like grew up literally just like milking cows and running around barefoot. And it was quite a low socioeconomic setting. And I didn't, frankly, like have the best childhood, like parent kind of situation growing up. And so my um that question, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, my view of what that could be was basically, I don't know, be a wife and maybe go on the farm next door. Like, that was genuinely the prospects that were available to me, especially from what I could see women around me doing. And by some miracle, so I went to university. I got my teaching degree because I didn't know what else to study. I was like, teaching sounds fine. And when I was 20, I just had this burning desire to go and see the world and get off the farm and just see what else was out there. So I had a teaching degree in one hand and a ticket to Berlin in the other. And I set off for this 1 year abroad. And that was 12 years ago. And so the story between, I feel like life kind of started when I stepped foot on that plane and moved to Berlin because my eyes and my mind just opened to like language and history and culture and different people. And I have this, it's the generalist in me, innate curiosity for the world and love of learning new things, whether that's how to navigate a city, how to communicate to in a group that no one speaks English, like all of these things that you get from traveling. And so I spent basically the past decade uh, making sure that I could survive, basically keep eating and keep moving was kind of my north star for my 20s. And that's how I fell into building businesses, which has kind of occupied my last 8 years.
Yeah, innate curiosity. This is so wonderful. I love it. I write it down. Yeah, fantastic. I'm also considering myself a generalist.
Hmm.
And this is exactly like you said. At least for me, it feels like it's a difficult place to be. And
Hmm.
any product you build, you usually cover and solve certain problem.
Hmm.
So if you can start maybe from this is a generalist, this is like who they are, and
Hmm.
then what the problems they and
Hmm.
then how you approach problems from the community perspective as like a
Hmm.
treatment.
Yeah, I like that. Kind of like a diagnosis. So I think the
Yeah.
first part of the question was around defining and definitions and naming something. And what I've come to realize is there
Mhm.
is huge power in giving something language and naming it and owning it. Um, and when I first started this, the word generalist, as you've kind of alluded to, had this negative connotation. It was like you're just a jack of all trades, the master of none. Why can't you focus? Why can't you specialize? Why can't you stick to one thing? And I guess intuitively, I knew that I disagreed with that because I think there is huge power in interdisciplinary thinking and collaboration. So, a big part of what I had to do for the first 6 months, 12 months to this day, probably for the rest of my career, is really push to change that narrative, um, which is not an easy thing to do. And I think having a community, this beautiful, happy accident, has made that 100 times easier because I'm not just saying, like, I think this is true. It's like I have hundreds of people now who I know who are inside and within this community, who just you get the most deep insights into who these people are, like who is self-identifying as a generalist, and to the point of like you can't focus, you why don't you just specialize, maybe you're broken, maybe all these narratives. When I started meeting people in Generalist World, there's people inside that have their PhD, for example, and I was like, so they must be able to go deep. We must be able to focus. That's not the common thread here. The common thread is reframing what it means to be a generalist, and that's going from someone that's unfocused to someone who is an expert in learning and an expert in problem solving and an expert in joining the dots, these different skill sets that a specialist may not have to the same extent. And so, to back to the kind of the how do we help, the community is a place where we gather, we listen, we learn, we understand what are the common threads that everyone's facing here, and collectively we try and figure it out. And that's actually a really big point, that at no point have I been like, I'm Milly and I have all the answers to this generalist conundrum. Like, at all. I am like, I will bring everyone together. I will facilitate a space that is a safe, trusted space with trusted people. And we'll just try and figure it out. And I'm not the guru. I do not have all the answers. Most days I ask more questions than I have more answers. But I think that's the power of community. You bring people together, you get these deeper insights, and then you can start building actually really meaningful solutions.
Yeah, once again, we talk about this all the time. I mean, in the community world, and Helena and I, it's about building these things together. You're doing it together
Mhm.
with the community. Well, you're part of
Mhm.
the community, but you're defining things and building on that, which is pretty cool. Listening to you, I'm also like, I think I'm also a generalist, to be honest. And I've always thought that it's such a lonely place. It's such a lonely
Yes.
place because the system that we live in, or I guess,
Mhm.
we kind of we're made believe that this is the way to go.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for everyone. It hasn't
Yeah.
worked for me. I've
Mhm.
also done a million different things, and I liked all of them. And I also always thought, like, okay, don't I have focus? But at the same time, I have a research master's degree, and you have a
Exactly.
research part on your website, and one thing at the top of skills was problem solving. So interesting, because for example, in my case, now a newly identified generalist, I
Mhm.
think that's one of the core strengths. And how many people are there in the generalist world community at the moment, actually?
So we're a paid membership model, and so the full community members, there's I think around 425, something like that, and they come from 20 different countries.
Yeah, and businesses we saw as well. There's quite a few
Yeah.
generalists. You also mentioned to us that, of course, this is a very intentional community.
Hmm.
What does it mean to you?
That's a great question. I think some context for this is that building Generalist World has been my first formal community building
Mhm.
experience. And in many ways, that I feel like that's actually worked to my advantage, because I've been able to come at it with fresh eyes, look at what this mainstream kind of advice and like, this is how you build a community, and really objectively look at that and be like, well, there's things in there that I like, and there's things in there that just I don't align with. And so I've come at it, that I guess from like almost like a slightly rebellious angle of like, well, I'm going to build a community, yes, following some of the science, but very much treating it like an art, because I think it's different to every other business or every other like company, because it's so centered around humans and people. um, and I guess when I started building, looking back, trying to remember like those early days, I was in a bunch of communities, like I was a part of many, and I realized that even though I was in them, I didn't feel like I was in them. I didn't really feel like this was a part of my identity and I like deeply resonated and related. It was more like an extension of social media almost, that there were some people like me. Um and I think it really comes down to like getting super clear on your why and who you're serving, and this is all linked to the like what it means to be an intentional community. And so for me, I knew a couple of things. I did not want a community that was just like a ghost town, that like people treated like a self promotion, drop and leave, and there was no depth of connection. It was just like a passing ships in the night. And I was like, I don't want that. Um, I wanted a community that was going to last for years. That was something I told myself at the very beginning. Like, this is not something that's going to fall over in the next 2 months. Like, this is going to be a sustained, long term, like decades, hopefully decades long community. And I think when you think about that at the very beginning, it changes the whole way you plan, and you're not thinking in days or weeks, you're thinking in months and years. And then I guess the third kind of part of the intentionality was being really thoughtful about who me, like Milly, as a leader, as a community leader, as the face of the community, um, what I wanted to bring to the community. What did I want the flavor and the tone to be? How did I want to have an impact on people's lives through how I could show up as a community leader? And so probably thought about that too much, about like the how to be a really, really thoughtful, genuine community leader.
I guess when building a community, often, if it's, for example, a product community, I guess we often don't really go deeply into thinking, okay, who am I? I am leading
Mm,
this community. I also want to kind of share and model certain behaviors, but these kind of deep and genuine and thoughtful connections, it's
yeah,
something that doesn't come out nowhere, right? So you
yeah,
really need to show up first.
yeah. I think it's
Yeah.
almost an
Yeah.
overlooked part of community building, like the essential importance of having that strong community base and community leader. It really sets the tone for everything, and I think that's where, there, you both will know, there's a lot of turmoil in the community industry at the moment with like layoffs, and I think it's about, as community leaders, being able to like assert that our value is enormous. And whether that's a product community or a community of practice, I think from the outside, community building can look like rainbows and like sunshine, and that it's like easy and it's fun and you're just hanging out. But like there is so much energy and thought and for me, intentionality that goes into building a community that people love. And I think it's about, we as an industry need to be able to explicitly say, like, this is what I have brought to the table, and there is huge and tangible value in what I bring.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Let's go maybe into the angle of like your builder journey as an ex-entrepreneur. I can totally understand, like building something from scratch. This is a very, very unique skill. And building
Hmm.
from scratch community by yourself and bootstrapping, it's like top level of skills required. And I like, really want to bring this knowledge to other people who may be dreaming about something similar, building an intentional community or other community, like
Hmm.
how they can start. Your advice and like really telling this your journey for
Hmm.
them to hear and maybe build something amazing.
Yeah. I think the first thing that people should ask themselves is getting clear on what is, is this going to be a business or is this going to be a hobby? And the sooner you can answer that question, and if the answer is this is going to be a business, then as soon as you can, you need to see if anyone is going to pay for that. Because the last thing you want to do is get 1 year in, become exhausted, you've poured everything into this, and then you realize that no one is going to pay. Like, at the end of the day, we do it because we love bringing people together, but you deserve to be paid for the work that you're doing. And if you are creating this meaningful impact in people's lives, again, huge value. So very early on, I think, like, honestly, almost immediately within the first few weeks, I was like, $99 a year, I think, was the initial like price point. It almost doesn't even matter what the price point is. It's just like, will someone take out their credit card, put it in, and be like, I value this enough to pay for it? And I think the other side of what I've learned from that is that people value what they pay for. So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy that
Mm.
if someone has skin in the game and someone has been like, okay, I will commit some actual money to this, they're probably going to show up and they're probably going to contribute more than they would if it was free. And like, but the caveat to all of that is that if you're going to be charging people for a community, you have to make sure it's delivering something of value. And there's kind of no way to get around that. So I would say, first, decide, is this a hobby? Is this a community? And then as soon as you can, see if anyone will pay for it. See if those early adopters, those original members, what percentage can you convert to prove this out? I think that would be the first steps I would start with.
How to find the first adopters? Like, what was your growth hacking? I don't like the word, but in general, like how it grew.
Yeah, it has been entirely on LinkedIn and Twitter. I started on Twitter with Generalist World. I think my first tweet was like, I don't know how to use this thing, but I'm a generalist. Is anyone else? And then I kind of feel like I got the heyday of Twitter a little bit. Now it's iffy. Where so I'm much more
Mm.
focusing my attention on LinkedIn, which is where a lot of like career professionals are. It's like a good fit, and so I do something called Build in Public, which in its essence is just being really transparent in all of the ups, the downs, the loop de loops, and people over the long term, if you can consistently show up, and I have been extremely consistent over the past 18 months, it builds this level of trust because there's only so long you can like fake something for, right? So if you're showing up over the long term and you're consistently being honest and sharing the good, the bad, the in betweens, the learnings, that builds such a deep level of trust with you and this like wider audience. And for me, my only regret is not starting building this brand like I really don't like the word personal brand, but for sake of ease of understanding, I regret not building this earlier, and because it's something that you can carry with you no matter your career, especially if you're a generalist. So no matter the pivot, no matter the reinventions, you'll always have this dedicated kind of audience who knows you and trusts you. I think there's no downside to starting that early.
How you envision? I'm very curious regarding the user journey. So basically,
Mhm.
is it a lifelong community, or it is a certain kind of graduation path of a user to be a part of community and then changing something, I don't know, then going to stop using the community, or it's like lifestyle community?
So we work on an annual or a quarterly basis. So people basically can renew every 3 months or every year. I have thought about lifetime, and it's something that crops into my head every now and again. I think whichever model you choose, it comes with its own challenges. Like, there is no perfect model. For me, I've thought about it a lot and I've opted to go annual is by far our most popular tier. And for me, a year is long enough to be able to really get some value. Like, I know a lot of communities do monthly. a month is nothing. A month goes so fast. People are really, really busy. So I've never done a monthly membership. I was like, I want people to be here who are aligned long term. And the shortest that I'm willing to do that would be 3 months. And even that was a big decision. And I'm still not 100% on the 3 months. Like for me, annual gives you enough time to actually like deeply get involved, to really get to know people, to really have a chance to give, to find value. And also like a year, there's so many ups and downs that people will face throughout the year. And if there is no expectation at all that people should be online every day in the community. It's like if you have something going on, you got a big project for the next 2 months, see you afterwards. Like that's the kind of relationship. There's no this I think community should never be a burden to someone's life. It should always be an ad. And when they need something, they can come back and they know that we're here.
I think what you also mentioned a bit before about your personal brand and sharing your paths. And I've seen this. I sometimes think like, Jesus, this woman writing these stories every day, literally. You're a really good storyteller as well. And I think that's what also kind of invites people in. Who is she? What is she doing? Would you say that a lot of the generalists who have joined the community have kind of accidentally stumbled upon you? Or is it like a word of mouth situation? How do people normally find this project?
I would say mostly through organic social media, through LinkedIn and Twitter, followed very closely by word of mouth and referrals. That is our entire marketing strategy, to be honest. It's like me taking the time each day, and it is time and it is effort. Let's not sugarcoat it, to tell these stories and to bring people in and to share all of the ups and downs and the learnings. And then the other side of it is just a great product, having a great product that people like and it makes a real difference in their life. And I think you can look for little signs. Like yesterday, I had someone reach out and they said, hey, someone in my network has just been laid off. Can I gift them a membership? And for me, it's signs like that I'm like, this is making a real dent in someone's life if they are then wanting someone else who's going through a tough spot, a tough squeeze, to have the same experience. And so I think as community builders, you have to read between the lines of these kind of interactions.
It's a fantastic story. You probably in the community heard so many stories from other members.
Yeah.
Like if you maybe can share something, not telling the names, but in general, some stories that you remember.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's been many. I mean, like I think what excites me most is that community is peer to peer. So it's not just me lecturing people or being like, listen to me. The beauty is like my job is to set the tone and set how we communicate, how we behave, the expectations, the outcomes. But then the magic happens completely out of my control. Like two people have now started a business together. Or if someone is hiring within their company, the first place they come to is Generalist World. And they're like, who needs a job? I've got this role. And because it's like generalist, you can usually kind of shapeshift into different roles. So there's a lot of hiring. And it's even just day to day things like yesterday, for example, we had someone post in the community that they're going through this job search. They're having a bit of a they called it spidey senses, like Spider-Man. That something was off in the job search, and they went into detail, super open, super vulnerable. It's like non-performative. It's like, this is the facts. I'm not polishing this for social media. And within an hour, 5 other people had jumped in to share their very open, very real, straight to the facts experience as well. And that peer to peer, for me, I believe is going to be the future. Like, I think that it is so, I now see it in action, of what happens when you bring people together and they can swap knowledge, swap experiences, swap notes of like life. Um, and especially now with technology, that we have the ability to do this asynchronously or in real time. Um, I think it really, we can do it across borders, across time zones. It just completely opens up how we can share that knowledge.
We keep hearing more and more out there that peer to peer is the way to go. More and more communities, and like not only communities, but whatever
Yeah.
organization or project really adopt this thinking, and it really does work. And I think in your case, this vulnerability element that you just shared in these examples really
Hmm.
also comes from what you mentioned earlier about you being
Hmm.
vulnerable, being open, and creating that environment for sharing. And I
Yeah.
guess I'm really curious, would you say that this kind of peer-to-peer, well, networking,
Hmm.
connection, and solving problems together is the main element of the
Hmm.
community? And of course, you have events, etc. But I'm really curious to know what else there is,
Yeah.
which is this is already amazing, but
Yeah. Yeah.
curious to know more.
I think that the bringing people together, and it's done in a very professional way. Like my first hire was a community person. Like I was like, I need help here because
Mhm.
um, no matter which way Generalist World branches out, the community has got to be the core. So my first investment back into the business was hiring someone to like really, I was like, we're taking this seriously. This is not a project. Like we're going to professionally design this community. And her name's Etcha. She is amazing. Big shout out. She is incredible. Do you know her?
Yeah, I know her. Yeah, I've worked with her. She's pretty cool.
Oh, there you
Yes.
go. It is a small world, the
Yeah.
community world. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
So I think the bringing people together and feeling validated, feeling seen, having a place that you can just show up and be yourself is a big benefit. Then there's also this educational resource piece, which like for me was a missing piece of my career, which is like, where on earth do I go to learn how to be a better generalist? Like there is nothing. There is nothing out there that is catered, because we have this group of people who have just been overlooked forever. And so
Mhm.
it is now my life's mission to change that. And we're doing that through media. So I've hired, I think, around 6 or 7 people from within the community. It's a great little ecosystem, to write these essays and these articles, about all about like how to be a generalist, how to progress in your career, how to navigate this like squiggly path. And we get most of our content ideas from the introduction channel. Like we have a template for like how you introduce yourself. And one of the questions is like, I would like to learn about, or I would like help with. And I just copy and paste those questions, have them in a Notion document, and then have the writers, if I'm like, if anything like piques your curiosity there or resonates, that is a genuine question from the community. And if one generalist is asking it, guarantee there'll be others who are also interested in it. So it's kind of like a flywheel of organic content that gets taken from the community and then produced into like really high quality articles.
It seems like it's pretty rich in terms of content as
Yeah.
well. At the beginning of our chat, later you mentioned something about like almost like a diagnosis. We had this joke. And, I think if you are a generalist and you've been struggling and you feel alone and overlooked and
Hmm.
misunderstood, and
Hmm.
then you find this, it's like when you get diagnosed, you're like, oh, what
Yeah,
a
a relief.
relief. It's
Well, it's the, and you know what that feeling is? That is validation. That's like, oh, it's not
yeah.
just in my head. Like there are other people like me. This is okay to be different. Like it is, what I get really like hyped about is that um the more people who are owning this, the more diversity of thought we're going to have within teams and organizations and corporations and hopefully governments one day. And I think the more diverse, like cognitively diverse, that teams are, the more like innovation, and the faster we can move, the better we can collaborate.
Listening to you and reflecting on this misunderstood group or a person,
Hmm.
let's say myself, newly identified generalist. I go to the generalist world, I connect with people, I realize, oh my God, I'm not alone. And
Hmm.
actually, I come to realize that this can be turned into something very positive. So this is
Yeah.
about finding your group, finding
Hmm.
your people, and turning what you thought was a hurdle perhaps in your career
Yeah.
and turning it into your superpower and really believing in yourself. And I think that's the power that it probably gives
Yeah.
to people. Yeah.
That is the perfect summary. Someone once said, it's a feature, not a bug. And it stuck with me forever because it really is. And I think the third piece of the puzzle, just to close that loop of the benefits, is jobs, right? Like every single generalist, every single person needs a job. And so how can we impact? And now this is a big like long-term stretch goal, but how do we change the way that we hire and that we how do we hire and support and retain this generalist talent? Because I think it's we're too far in caring about company culture and employee culture to paint everyone with the same brushstroke and assume that everyone wants to be treated the same and wants to progress in this straight arrow of a line. And so a big thing that I've actually just brought someone on into the team, Nikita, to tackle this, to begin to tackle this. And I am aware it's a big, meaty problem, but how do we get generalists these
Mhm.
jobs that are meaningful to them, that are built for us, that let us flex, that let us tap into, as you said, Helena, the superpower that we do have? Why would, as a company, why would you ever want to dim that? And like, I'm like, let's leverage it. This is a certain type of person with a certain type of talent. Leverage the talent. Like,
Mhm.
what are we missing out on by not doing that?
My personal observation, if it is a startup, early stage startup, maybe like till series B, there is a place generalist to be,
Yeah.
but later on, and also in the bigger companies, it's like there is no place. So, and you as a journalist in the certain part of like startup journey, you need to go deeper into some specialty.
Hmm.
But if you don't
Hmm.
want, which is a very strange position
Yeah.
in general, because probably there is a place for you, and this is
Yeah.
like a misconcept how the company works. And I saw so many fantastic generalists who just left the company because it was no place in new
Yeah.
structure, because and
Yeah.
they didn't want to go to niche. This is
Yeah.
so important to educate. And also I think there is also recruiters who also kind of a border for some of the
Hmm.
generalists to enter bigger companies, who like kind of filter out. And also managers who are hiring, they don't understand the value. So you do
Yeah.
such a societal educational work, which is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. You hear a lot that saying, that quote, and it's like, uh, startups are built by generalists and scaled by specialists. And it's essentially saying that generalists do
Mhm.
not belong in bigger organizations. And I want to pull my hair out every time I hear that because I think it's so short sighted. And it's so like, it's just taking this very old school, archaic system and not even challenging it. It's just like, okay, this is where we fit. We're not going to rock the boat at all. And I disagree with that. I think that anywhere that you want innovation and anywhere that you want cohesive teams, you need generalists in those teams. And like, I just want to be really clear, I'm not like anti specialist at all. Like, we need specialists. We 100% need amazing, deep expertise, specialist talent. We need that, but we need to be helping them collaborate with generalist talent. It's again just seeing people for who they are, the shape that they are, and leveraging it. And for me, it's just like it's in the best interest of everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, this talk is so inspiring because, of course, we are newly identified and you
Yeah.
generalists. We feel heard and we
Yeah.
feel seen. And
Good.
it's all, I mean, imagine it's all thanks to you, the person who once realized that, you
Yeah.
were perhaps a generalist. So this is extremely powerful. And just
Yeah.
thanks so much for everything that you do.
That's amazing to
So
hear,
cool.
and it's
Yeah.
it's it's in a way it's a little bit hilarious because like this was in front of me my entire career, like my whole career. This has been like hidden in plain sight. Maybe this is often what happens with like business ideas. Just one day something clicks, and it has been a joy. Honestly, like some of the most enjoyable, like fulfilling work that I've ever done has been leading this. So it's an absolute pleasure.
I guess we're coming to an end of our fantastic, inspiring, and super fun conversation. But before we go, can you please share what you're working on right now or what your plans are for the future?
Yes, we have a very exciting plan coming up. So, as I kind of alluded to earlier, we have been spending lots of time, resource creating these resources for generalists. So, mostly through essays, articles, and through like social media at the moment. But there was a gap, and the gap was so huge because I was asked about it probably 100 times in the last year. Everyone was like, Milly, where's the podcast? There is no, I like reading it, but I want to hear it. I want to hear. And it, I really like hesitated for a long time because, as you both know, like podcasts are a huge amount of work, and I don't want to do anything that isn't really high quality, like anything that is kind of just for the sake of it. And so it's taken 18 months, and I've finally, a wonderful woman came into my life, Lindsay, and she is going to co host it with me. And we are officially going live with the podcast. And the thinking behind it is like, what happens when you give generalists a microphone? You know, this has never happened. Even this podcast, as you say, from many of your listeners, this is going to be the first time they've ever heard someone speak really positively about being a generalist. And so what happens when we scale that and we give more people microphones? Like how much it's going to be super like really focus on like inspiring stories, but very tactical as well. Like there is no blueprint for being a generalist. So we're going to gather some incredible generalists from multiple different countries all around the world, different roles, different industries. And we're just going to give them a microphone and we're going to listen and learn. So I'm really, really excited for that to come out.
That sounds amazing.
We will be waiting
Yeah,
for
we'll
it.
be waiting. Yeah. And where will people be able to find the podcast?
And also
Yeah.
you, like, what is the best way to reach you out for the people listening to this?
Yeah, so our website is super simple, generalist.world. You can find everything. My name is Milly Tamati, and that is my handle on everything. I believe I am the only one in the world, or one of the few. So you should look up Milly and Generalist, and you will see me. And then the podcast is called Generally Curious. So you'll find that on all major podcast networks.
People will be searching, and so will we. Yeah.
Awesome. This was fun.
Yeah,
Thank you
Milly.
so much, Milly, for being with us this minutes and inspiring users to start their own community and also some generalists to come to your community and
You're very welcome.
get some help and also educating society, which is also very important.
Thank you
Yay.
so much, and we hope to see you soon. Yeah.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If our conversation resonated with you, please consider subscribing to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Your ratings and reviews are invaluable in helping us reach more like minded people. You can find all our episodes and learn more about the show at communityunlocked.substack.com.
See you in the next episode.